I am so very consistent. So let's continue. So we have our new team of Rangers. Bulk Skull and Lieutenant Steel are going to kind of be audience surrogates, and they're kind of standoffish to this clearly new team. They don't know their identities, but they can tell these new guys are just the worst. Rookies, am I right? But throughout the season, the Rangers prove themselves. Like TJ, the Red Ranger, who's a balanced and calm man who's gladly willing to foster harmony between the team while trying to balance college, mechanics, and baseball. Though he does get easily distracted and will ramble about cars and vehicles and stuff if he ever gets the opportunity. Carlos the Green Ranger is kind of hot-headed and impulsive, but TJ helps him learn to calm down and think before he does, while Carlos helps him to keep on track. Ashley is the mom of the team, always willing to care for others. This is due to her family being very wealthy and pretty distant. She always wanted a little brother, which is why she really wants to care for people, such as Cassie the Pink Ranger, who's pretty standoffish, the loner of the team, because she was bullied in high school, so she doesn't really get along with people easily. She tried becoming a rock star of her band, The Creeps, even though they're not really good at it. But throughout the season, Cassie learns to grow closer to the Rangers and open up, and it turns out she's just as caring as Ashley can be. Justin is just a kid. He eventually learns to adapt to his size changing. He's a smart kid, like building robot clones of his friends to spend more time with them, but he takes stuff too literal. Like an episode of Justin trying to help Carlos get a girlfriend, and Carlos starts acting all rude and mean because Justin sees this working on TV and thinks it's gonna work for real life. But the girl ends up rejecting Carlos because she likes how Carlos normally is, not this whole fake persona. He also grows a little to have self-doubt issues that he's just a kid among adults, and eventually he's just going to be replaced by his cousin Rocky. For a little bit, Demetria is the mentor for the team, speaking mostly in riddles, but eventually when the team figures out what those riddles mean, they kind of are impactful. Up until episode 5, when Vizeron, after dealing with the Rangers, he survives, and it turns out he's also from Aquaria, just like Demetria. And it turns out that after he crashed, he was discovered by the pirates, who decide to help him out. In exchange, he'll be the new dishwasher for Divatox, with Porto hitting him with a special mixture that both washed his mind and brainwashed him. Eventually, that special helmet he's always wearing that's dousing him in the special water went dry and he got his memories back, so he decided to actually save the Rangers. And after he's repaired, he delivers a message to Demetria, revealing that she has a missing sister. She's somewhere on Earth. They don't know exactly where. So Demetria decides to leave with Vizeron, popping back in with the Rangers every once in a while, not every episode, projecting a vision via Zordon's old tube, leaving Larigo and Alpha to be the mentors for the season. Larigo is very wise, but a little silly, like Yoda. And Justin also helps him get modern clothes, which leads to some shenanigans. Divatox and the Pirates are the main villains for the season. We'll try to tone down Elgar. Divatox continues her contest to find someone worthy enough to marry her, which in reality is being worthy enough to be possessed by Dark Spectre, so he can marry her. Even though technically she's married to Rygar, who was leader of a biker gang before, with his brother Porto, and Elgar, who's Divatox's nephew, and they eventually find a way to turn their experimental growth cheese into torpedoes, similar to Lord Zed's grenades that help grow monsters. And remember that robot Divatox found in episode 3? Well, for the most part, he was being used as a coat hanger, but eventually he reboots, introducing himself as the Blue Centurion from the Space Patrol. In the future, as he tells the United Alliance of Evil launched a massive attack on the galaxy in 1998, and by the year 2000, the entire universe was under the thumb of Dark Spectre. And he's looking for Zordon and the Power Rangers to report this message to them, to stay on alert. Unfortunately, Divatox found him first, so she just reports that actually the Rangers have turned evil. Look, They're parking in a no parking zone, and they're beating up helpless bystanders who are totally not just piranhatrons dressed like humans. So BC goes to investigate the Rangers and he fights them. He also has a tendency to end his sentences with Roger, which leads to some confusion. But eventually, the Blue Centurion finds out what's really going on, and he apologizes to the Rangers and helps them out. Also, his Zord arrives fashionably late to the past, and it turns into the Signal Megazord. BC tries delivering the message, but it turns out Divatox copied the message, scrambled the original, so the Rangers only kind of know, but don't know the dates of what's happening, as Divatox leaks the information to the United Alliance of Evil. BC also kind of just stays in the past and he acts as a cop. He's actually doing so good and so efficiently, this actually ends up leading to Bulk Skull and Jerome Stone ending up getting fired from the force. So now they have to take minimum wage jobs at the surf spot. So much for Stone's dream of being a private detective. We adapt the comic book of a crossover with Big Bad Beetleborgs Metallics. And three typical average kids, Joe, Drew, and Roland, are at school doing school stuff. Meanwhile, the evil Nucus is using his enslaved artist, Les, to create a dimensional transporter. And if that doesn't work, just color over the past monsters and reuse them. Meanwhile, in another dimension, the Rangers are having a picnic and having fun. Ashley's going to be a student teacher. Meanwhile, with their villains, they get communications through with Newcomb revealing the Beetleborgs are from a different dimension. They compare notes and recap their seasons, like how the Beetleborgs were created via magic and a comic, but bringing them to life brought all their villains to life, including Nucus eventually, and he has the artist's brother, Les, who's also an artist creating for him. Eventually settling on creating a pocket dimension to hide the Rangers in, and then have them fight each other, leading them into the dimensions, and totally won't backstab each other. They get to a giant printer, and suddenly evil clones of the Power Rangers attack the Beetleborgs, and then evil clones of the Beetleborgs attack the Rangers. The Beetleborg comics exist in the Ranger universe, and Justin used to read them. Everyone morphs and fights, and then when the clones taunt them and lead them to the dimensions, they fall for it. The clones hide and the real teams meet each other and fight. But then they start discussing and there's lots of confusion, so they start just talking out what's going on, and then they realize we're in another dimension. The Rangers, Roland, and Drew talk over how they can escape, while Joe discusses with Justin. And Justin thinks about it's time to quit. He just doesn't feel like he's really qualified to be with everyone. He's just slowing them down and gonna upset them. But Joe says he's good enough, and you should believe in yourself. Quitting is laying them down. All they want you to do is at least help them try. But oh no, the clones have returned, but their ink has started to fade and now they're all miscolored. So it's easier to tell who's who as they fight. Alpha and Larigo are able to patch through to the pocket dimension. Turns out Divatox and Nucus were absorbing everyone's powers when they were fighting. So if they combine everyone's powers, they could overload the thing. And they try it, and they're able to rip a hole in reality. So everyone escapes, but this also causes them to demorph, and everyone sees the Beetleborgs are kids. And they quickly explain their backstory in case you didn't hear the Beetleborgs and Metallic theme song. But the copycats followed them, and the copy Beetleborgs grow giant. The copy Turbo Rangers go into the big battle wagons from episode 2 and 3. So it's time for everyone to remorph.
Shift into turbo. Data bundle. Input card. Beetle Black.
Everyone gets into the whips, and the normal Beetleborgs fight the evil Rangers, while the Rangers fight the evil Beetleborgs, finishing the evil Beetleborgs off by combining the Robo-Beetles with the Megazord. Like, it's holding Drew and Roland's, and then Joe's plugs into the back, and the turbines are also blasters. Largo opens a portal, and there's some shenanigans with the haunted house crew. If you don't know Big Bad Beetleborgs, that's your cue to go watch some. Everyone says their goodbyes, and the Rangers go home. Then one episode, Rocky's returned, and he's all healed up, and he wants to go camping with the new team. Justin is upset because he thinks, well, now Rocky's here, he's just gonna become the new Blue Ranger. Why am I here? So when they have to deal with the contestant Flamite, he doesn't got his head in the game, and it gets so bad the military actually remembers they exist. Both reinsurances from his team and his cousin Rocky, Justin eventually realizes he's worthy to be the Blue Turbo Power Ranger, and Rocky goes off to start his firefighter training. Because today he's got great experience. In the following episode, we learn about the most powerful vehicles in the universe, Storm Blaster and Lightning Cruiser. The vehicles of the gods of Laragos' galaxy. They can fly, shoot lasers, they're sentient, and only the worthy can ride in them. But unfortunately, during the attack of his galaxy, they were imprisoned by Divatox's brother, General Havoc, who arrives as a courtesy from the United Alliance to Divatox, with his huge space station, which becomes the new headquarters for the pirates. And turns out Havoc is Elgar's father, and he ran away to be with Divatox because Havoc is a very stern, emotionalist kind of guy. He's going to whip these pirates into shape to be worthy of the United Alliance of Evil. And Dark Spectre. Elgar was transporting the two vehicles, but they ended up escaping, and end up joining the Rangers. Havoc also arrives with new foot soldiers known as the Chromites, who are way better than Piranhatrons in every way, especially because this means we can use more Carranger footage. But we'll also use Piranhatrons every so often. There's also a white one named Chromie that's like the Steve Viacon of the foot soldiers that's somehow always getting into trouble. Havoc's a far smarter and more strategic villain than Divatox. He tries separating the Rangers from BC by causing distractions. Then the next episode, he introduces himself to the Rangers and he's trying to reform the pirates. But it's all just a ruse. And then the episode where all the Power Rangers gets cooked into a giant pizza.
We're here to toss your salad.
But then after that, the crew gets an alert that Dark Spectre has taken a new host, thanks to Finster, who works for Rita and Zed. And Divatox is like, what? Seeing Dark Spectre projecting footage of Rita and Zed laughing and like running their hands through giant piles of gold coins. And Divatox screams in frustration. But he also decides to be generous by giving Havoc a brand new golden helmet and also a new gift, Metallosaurus. The Rangers also finally discover Divatox's secret base on land, but gets destroyed by a mysterious invisible guy. The Rangers investigate and eventually find out the guy is the Phantom Ranger, who's tall, dark, mysterious, and helpful, so Cassie gets a little bit of a crush on him. And later, at the surf spot, everyone's kind of discussing who he could be. And Cassie starts thinking it might be Bulk after seeing him prevent some guy from dining and dashing, and throwing around some fake karate moves, kind of like what the Phantom Ranger was sort of doing, which caused the guy to slip and fall into the arms of the Blue Centurion. And Bulk says adios and does the same hand thing the Phantom Ranger does. They look for the Phantom Ranger but get attacked by Metallosaurus, and even in the Megazord they get thrashed, which leads to Havoc sending Monster and some Chromites to steal the Megazord. The Phantom Ranger reappears to the Rangers and tells them to never give up hope. He was sent here by the Morphin Masters. And he gives them a gift. Out of his carrier Zord is the Rescue Zords. And they make easy work of Metallosaurus. Havoc, upset about this, has Metallosaurus rebuilt using the blueprints from the Turbo Megazord, but going through them he also sees the Phantom Ranger, who he recognizes. In the next episode, the Phantom Ranger teaches the Rangers how to play volleyball, which will be very important no matter how much they complain. When the ball flies out, Cassie goes after it, but then Havoc kidnaps her, noticing that she has a crush on the Phantom Ranger. The Rangers go to rescue her, but then it turns out she was actually Havoc in disguise, and the Phantom Ranger gets kidnapped. And the real Cassie freed herself earlier. Titanosaurus 2 is attacking, so the Rangers go to deal with that, and it turns out the rescue Zords are Transformers and have robot forms. And they use that experience of volleyball to bounce the bombs from Titanosaurus back at it. And then they combine to be the rescue Megazord. Havoc isn't too upset. We have the ruby still. So he uses the Eltarian ruby to take over the Turbo Megazord. And the two Megazords fight, during which TJ uses Lightning Cruiser to fly up and sneak into the Turbo Megazord and fights everyone out of it. And then on top of the Megazord. They return the ruby to the Phantom Ranger, who was dying without it, and he thanks them, but says that it's his time to go. He will return when they're needed again. In the next episode, Cassie's helping cast people for the upcoming festival in Angel Grove, but the next band turns out to be the Creeps, her former band, of a new frontman named Crash, who's actually way better at singing than her. What? And she kind of starts falling into her old habits and joining the band again. And she's singing way better than normal. But she's also slipping into her old personality, which isn't that good. And it turns out Crash has actually been turning into a monster due to the influence of Dark Spectre and his bad personality. And the former bandmates also. And they become their own evil ranger team. The Creep Rangers. And Crash was given the ability from Dark Spectre to sing everyone's dark desires to life, causing them to become evil and eventually turn to monsters. They're pretty evenly matched with the Turbo Rangers, up until they have their own cannon, the Scrambler, which uses a gem from Divatox, and it's pretty effective. But Demetria returns to the Rangers, and turns out she had built a new morpher, becoming the Turbo White Ranger. And she has these special ultimate white riddle bombs. You have to answer a riddle or they'll blow up in your face. What's a Mamaya's favorite fruit? The answer is papaya. The crew is watching Crashing and Creeps in the grass, and they run away, dropping Divatox's jewel, which Demetria recognizes as a similar jewel to her own. Huh? But the Creeps aren't done yet, as they call the Creep Megazord, and they fight, and eventually lose. The Creeps get arrested by the Blue Centurion, and Demetria waves goodbye to the Rangers, but she says she might be closer to her sister than they think. Then we get a crossover with Zeo. We meet the original team, like Tommy and Kat are going to college with TJ, Rocky and Tanya got jobs, and Adam's doing his stunt work, but also he's been secretly recreating the Zeomorphers with smaller individual Zeo crystals to able to maybe work. He was working with Largo, but meanwhile, General Havoc hired someone to put special gas in cars that cause them to drive to Havoc so they can scrap them. The Rangers are on the scene and fight them, but it gets too much for the gasoline monster and he retreats. But it turns out this was all part of Havoc's plan, because meanwhile he was sending a robot from the Machine Empire to douse the former Zeo Rangers with the mind control water that Porto made earlier. This leads to a conflict between the two teams, and they fight, with a little bit of friendly fire on the Turbo side. It gets so bad they even summon the Megazords and fight, but they're very evenly matched, leading to Tommy and TJ hopping out of the Zords and fighting on ground. And then the guys show up just to gloat. But that wasn't part of the plan, and they forgot the water, and it eventually wears off, and Tommy snaps back into it. Everyone meets back up, but then Tommy and the Zeo Rangers get kidnapped. The Turbo Rangers are driven away by the gasoline monster's fire. But the Phantom Ranger returns, and he agrees to help them train, military style, to get strong enough to rescue the Zeo Rangers. And this is because they're gotta get strong enough to pilot the Zeo Megazord to get onto General Havoc's ship. They sneak aboard, but then get ambushed, It turns out they and the Zeo Rangers are getting siphoned for their morphine energy. But luckily TJ was hiding, and he breaks through the wall and saves everyone. Freeing everyone, they blast their way out of there, escaping. They roll call and fight the monsters, yada yada, big Megazord fight. Fan Ranger does the hand thing, says, "Until next time, adios." Then everyone hangs out, and Tommy reveals he was given a message from Zordon that he wants the Zeo team to come to Eltar to help clean up, because Rhea and Zed's forces have started to retreat. And they leave via a ship from Nasta, who already knows about the Zordon arrangement. But it turns out it was actually Havoc throwing his voice to sound like Zordon. And to reveal that he's calling Rita and Zed, and they're doing a false retreat, which leads to the series finale. Chase into Space opens with Justin sleeping, but he also sees Dark Spectre in his nightmare.
You are alone, child. There is only darkness for you, and only death for your people.
Justin wakes up horrified. He tells the team the next morning, and they try getting communications with Zordon. He reveals that no, he didn't call the Zeo Rangers. What are you talking about? Everyone is completely confused, and then suddenly Dark Spectre reveals himself, revealing that he captured the Zeo Rangers and consumed their Zeo crystals, becoming even more powerful. The Turbo Rangers go to deal with that, but they just get thrashed in the rescue Zord. TJ panicking suggests they use self-destruct by getting up close to Dark Spectre, hugging him, and jumping out of the rescue Megazord and blowing up. It does not work. Even with them going Kid Goku on his King Piccolo, he just recovers and thrashes the Turbo Megazord. So Plan C, TJ flies up and launches the Turbo Cannon into the mouth of Dark Spectre, and that does the trick, blowing him up from the inside. But it also turns out this was a massive distraction because the two siblings are launching a massive attack with Piranhatrons and Chromites against the command center, sieging the tower. The Rangers Blue Centurion and Dimitri arrive, but the God vehicles get captured and all the Rangers in BC make it inside. But at that moment, thousands of miles away, off the coast of Africa, Dark Spectre found a new host, and it was the body of the demon that was summoned in the movie. He teleports to the command center, revealing that he's taken a new host to the Rangers, and generously gifting Divatox for the new host body, blasting the last amount of energy from the command center so the robots invade in. The Rangers tried their best, but they're severely underpowered, and finally, the command center is destroyed by the bad guys for good. Then a hologram of a robot appears, telling them that Eltar has fallen and Zordon has been captured. Dark Spectre says excellent, and all the bad guys teleport away. The Rangers emerge from the rubble, demorphed and demoralized, and the turbo key snapped. Alpha finds the black box to the command center and tells the Rangers they have to find Zordon. Justin remembers Nasta, so tries sneaking in to get a spaceship, but he gets captured. But Commander recognizes Justin and knows that this time Zordon actually sent them. Justin and the Blue Centurion will remain on Earth to help defend. Demetria will do her best to defend while also looking for her sister, and the rest will blast off into space. Hope you enjoyed. Make sure to hit the like button and subscribe in case you did.